Undertale does something incredible. It's a JRPG that exists on its own terms, free from nostalgia in a genre that's been completely tied to its legacy for a decade. There are a lot of good ideas about what happened to this particular style of role-playing game that so many of us grew up on, but I haven't played one in a while that was in touch with what drew me to the genre to begin with. Undertale is a linear narrative epic, and it's divorced from grinding and stats, but still filled with memorable people and places. It fans the flames of adventure the way that games like Chrono Trigger and Earthbound did way back when, and it managed to do all of that in a relatively short 5-hour playthrough, which is delightful. For as emotionally draining as Life is Strange can be, it captures the serenity of adolescence with an all-too-familiar sense of romance and melancholy. It has a grasp of the heightened emotional weight of the everyday, and the way that life-changing events can get dropped like a brick in the routine of education. Moreover, Life is Strange's use of branching narrative as a tool to communicate the paralyzing nature of youth is quite clever, and its irresistible small-town aesthetic adds tons of personality to a game with already touching character. It doesn't get everything right, but it's more courageous than a lot of games dare to be without feeling cheap or thoughtless. I think it's harder than ever for a jack-of-all-trades narrative to meet expectations. To weave the strictest definition of plot together with emergent scenarios and player-produced elements of self-expression is no easy task. Fallout 4 not only manages to do all of this with aplomb, but it does so in the context of a massive and meticulously detailed world. I won't pretend I don't feel a twinge of disappointment that Bethesda's latest work doesn't quite match the creativity and clever design of Skyrim, but it's nevertheless an altogether impressive achievement and a simply fantastic game. Reconciling the reality that Metal Gear Solid 5 is both one of the best AAA games ever made, and also an outright joke that's simultaneously embarrassing and often laughably bad, has been one of my favorite things to wrap my head around in 2015. For all of the game's ugly flaws, the Phantom Pain still feels like a trailblazer in modern design. Its playfulness, the way it breathes cinematic flair into its barren landscapes, and the breadth of options it provides make it a high watermark in open-world games. That a game with such bad writing and weak characters can still manage to evoke an intense conversation and strong tone is a testament to how successful the rest of the game truly is. When I look out at the Montreal skyline and see the churches, the buildings, the stillness in the distance, my mind wanders to Bloodborne's gothic Lovecraftian world. It's my new standard for Horizons. I'm teasing, but it's hard not to feel creative inside of From Software's latest. The layers and layers of intrigue that Bloodborne creates using aesthetics and player vulnerability is amazing, and the ever so slightly more contextual narrative only adds to its intense sense of discovery. And it can never be overstated how impressive it is that players keep their bearings in such intricate levels presented without any kind of map or compass. You have to applaud SOMA for being so focused. It has a narrative it wants to explore, and it is impressively committed and restrained in delivering it. In a lesser game, the narrative arcs would have centered around the twists or set pieces, but SOMA's story finds a much more natural ebb and flow by focusing on situation and having its characters come to natural conclusions through their environment. And it's a science fiction story about consciousness, which is already something that I love. But SOMA's incredible pursuit of claustrophobia as horror is so powerful that I get anxious and tense just thinking about it. The idea of using the ocean to affect this is so potent. There's a simple scene in this game that represents about the scariest thing I can wrap my head around. Everybody's Gone to the Rapture finds an extraordinary beauty in its web of interpersonal relationships. It finds the joy in sadness, the deep sorrow in joy, the power of our spiritual center, and the weakness of our faith. It's meaningfully sincere and convincingly human. Rapture has you wandering through a small community unraveling the thought behind every small moment, the sweet nothings, the callous words, and the reckoning at the end of days. Rapture's picture is rich and lovely, but it's also accompanied by a breathtaking score that would be among my favorite things released this year with or without the rest of the game. There is no amount of hyperbole that'll do justice to Super Mario Maker. It's a masterclass in design, a bible of technique passed on from the herald of modern games, an anthem to one of our medium's most important series. Super Mario Maker just might be as significant as anything that Nintendo has ever made, and it's nearly impossible to wrap my head around that idea in a modern context. It feels like the end of an era, a chronicle of our last 30 years as an industry, a look at where we are and where we're going. I cannot even fathom what it would be like to grow up with this as a tool at my disposal. The Beginner's Guide discusses the old adage of a tree falling in the woods through the lens of the creative process. The minutiae of self-discovery, taunting brick walls, and the endless internal arguments that go into creating something from nothing. Just how painful it can be when you're staring deadpan into a blank canvas and nothing comes out. And it does all this couched in a conversation about what makes a game at a time when every single semantic debate is obsessed with this one and only idea. That The Beginner's Guide can do all of this and tell an emotionally resonant story with such inspired use of form and structure, elevated in a way I'll never forget.
You think it's murder? I mean, clearly it's murder. What can I do to help?
The ingenuity of her story's gripping web of misdirection, fabrications, and intrigue is spellbinding. It asks its audience to engage with it physically and mentally in both passive and active ways while it establishes story and character, and it's just so smart, so inventive. Casting players as homicide detectives faced with an unsolved murder and only whatever evidence was collected way back at the scene of the crime is unbelievably immersive. And a lot of this is owed to Viva Seifert's performance, which is among the best in the medium. All of this in a simple, easy-to-consume package that still evokes the spirit of play. Her story is absolutely thrilling. It's my game of the year.
So they both had a love for the captain's son, all the wind and the rain, but he only cared for the youngest one, all the dreadful wind.
And that's it. That's 2015. Do tell me what your game of the year games are, because I would be super curious to know. And if it suits you, you can share some of our stuff with a friend. It makes all the difference in the world. If you're feeling charitable, there's information to support us below. And I guess that's it. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. Thanks for being with us, and keep talking about games, because they're still the best.